First of all, I just wanted to thank Toni and Jeff for asking me to do this. I am honored that they have asked me to be a small part of their story. And today I'm here to hopefully ask some questions of them that may give us some understanding of what they've been through the last 5 years, where they are today, and where they want to be in the next 5 years. We're doing this today in an interview type setting, where I've been given the permission to ask any questions that I would like, and they will respond from their hearts, how they felt, and what they experienced. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and, this is for both Jeff and Toni. Please share the first time you received the news of Olivia's condition and help us understand the journey that you went through until the time of her birth.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, please share the first time you received the news of Olivia's condition and help us understand the journey that you went through until the time of her birth.
Yeah, I think so. I do think so.
Okay, so everything was going fine for the first few weeks, and when we went in for our 20-week ultrasound, it was actually 19 weeks, the technician was having some trouble, and she wouldn't really tell us why. All she would say is that she couldn't see the kidneys and she couldn't see the bladder. So we didn't really think anything of it. So about a week later, we got a call from, I think it was my OB office, and said that there was some flags that were showing up on some testing, possibly Down syndrome. So then we were set up to see the perinatalogist from Sutter downtown. And so we only expected to be meeting with a, what do you call it, a geneticist.
Mm-hmm.
And they would do
we
a...
had signed up for pre-screening.
Yeah, and so we were gonna have an appointment with that lady, and then they were gonna do another ultrasound with more in-depth technology. They could see more. So we were expecting to hear news whether our baby had possible Down syndrome.
Yeah.
But it didn't end up that way. And so the doctor came in and she looked at us and said, basically, and I don't even know exactly how she said it, but that they couldn't find the kidneys. It was a possible small kidney there, but they didn't know for sure. It could be an adrenal gland, and that because there was no kidneys, the baby was not producing enough amniotic fluid, so it was hard for them to see, and then too, the baby would not develop her lungs. And we also found out at that appointment that our baby was a girl. Mm-hmm. And then she said, this condition is basically fatal. And I remember sitting there in that chair thinking to myself, fatal. Like, fatal. So our baby isn't gonna live. And at that time, the baby was kicking me so hard. She was moving around. She was definitely alive. And so I just remember the doctor was talking, and it just sunk in that our baby was not going to live. And I didn't know what that looked like. And just feeling like it was a huge, huge punch to my gut. And disbelief, because everything felt normal. And if it wasn't for the ultrasound, we wouldn't have thought otherwise. And so I think after that, the doctor gave us some time. We just cried. And then she let us go. Thankfully, she was very compassionate and let us go out the back entrance so that we didn't have to face other patients. And the drive home, I don't really remember, but I was crying a lot. And so just not knowing what was going to happen, and just just disbelief, I think, is what it was.
I'd say for me, I'd say as the husband, as the male partner, it's just, I was numb. It's pretty instant. The line has been drawn in the sand, and life is dictating terms. And it's surreal because in the moment your partner, my wife, is just crushed. She's instantly taken to zero. That what is inside of her is not sustainable. And I was completely numb. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I remember being on the opposite side of the bed, and the perinatologist and the doctor, of course, is on Toni's other side. The monitor's there, and she's looking around and just knows something's wrong, something's off. And I just remember absolutely being numb, not knowing how to react, not knowing what to say. I didn't say anything. It's so surreal. It's like you're not even there. You're just in the moment, and in the moment you're just there. But nothing can be said, nothing can be done. You can't change it. And I just remember Toni just being crushed, and my heart just bleeding for her. And walking out the back of the hall it's a double-edged sword. You're walking out there for a very specific reason, but you also feel like you're marked. Like there's a cloud over you. And I just remember getting at the car and Toni just breaking down again and just uncontrollably sobbing, and me just not knowing what to do, what to say, how to react. So I just stayed quiet. And driving home was like autopilot. Don't know exactly how we made it home. Don't remember the drive home. But what I do remember is the following 3 days or so after being diagnosed and going home, and I remember it being a very neat just experience. It's like I said before, all of a sudden everything changed, right? And we didn't have a choice. We couldn't change it. We couldn't fix it. And it just felt like from that point forward, God was in the driver's seat and we were in the passenger seat. We didn't have a choice. But we were being told to be calm and to let Him hold us. Let Him wrap His arms around us. And it was very interesting. It was almost in an orchestrated fashion without even trying. Either one of us would be uncontrollably sobbing and just I like to say this phrase, vomiting out all that raw emotion that you do not know what to do with and how to handle. But yet I've got an amazing partner here that is at that moment able to be stable, calm, collected, as I'm falling apart in her arms, or on the couch, or just going back and forth, or pacing around the house. And then all of a sudden, my well would run dry. I was exhausted, right? My well would run dry, and then her well would be overflowing. And I could be that strength. I could be that comfort, that pillow. And it went on. It went on for days. It went on for days like that, and it was beautiful. In retrospect, as I look back on it, it was amazing. Like it was nothing that we planned, nothing that we preordained, nothing that we structured and said, this is how we're going to handle it. So I guess fast forward up into, obviously with something like this, you grieve multiple times, right? we grieved when we thought it was Down syndrome. That didn't last long. And then 2 days later or whatnot, we grieved while being asked, do you want to carry or abort? And we grieved every week or 2 weeks that we went back for another ultrasound, hoping and praying that as the baby develops, that the kidneys and or the bladder would start showing itself and come up. And that went on, but at 33 weeks, another pretty amazing thing happened. I used to take the light rail to work at Watt and 80, and I took off that morning for work. This is Friday, the day before Olivia was born. And I get down to the light rail station. I realize I left my office keys. I never put my office keys and my personal keys on the same ring. I just too bulky and didn't want them mixed in there if I didn't have to on a day I don't work. So I'm like, I gotta turn around and go back. I turn around and I go back to the house, and Toni's there on the driveway, and she's getting herself to go to the hospital because she's apparently in labor at 33 weeks. And it just started out as cramping, and then she called the advice nurse, and I was already gone, and the advice nurse said, just get yourself to the hospital. And that was absolutely amazing. That was amazing that I was there at the right time, at the right moment, not because I planned it, not because it was our strategy on how we're going to get through this mess, or whatever you want to call it, right? There's no rhyme or reason. There's definitely nothing you can control. In a lot of ways, you're just along for the ride. It was amazing to see God show up. It was amazing to see Him move in our lives relationally. The stability at which we experienced was an awe to us, an awe to Toni's parents and who they knew her to be as a child. They were amazed by her strength and her perseverance and her decision to let Olivia be born when Olivia wants to be born. They were very proud of their baby daughter. And God showed Himself in interesting ways throughout the time too. Toni, you want to share about the Sparrow? Yeah.
We're jumping around a little bit. I hope that's okay. But yeah, the Sparrow. Some of you know who've read our blog and have been with us the whole time. But after our diagnosis, the song "His Eyes on the Sparrow," it's a very popular song. All of you know, and it just kept coming to mind, and that how much more important to God is Olivia than the sparrows. And so if God can take care of the sparrows, God will take care of Olivia. He will, whatever that may be. And that may mean having to let her go. But we hoped that there would be a miracle and that her kidneys would show. But that was just continually on my mind is the sparrow. And one day we were up in Auburn and just taking a day, and I think I don't know if we went to lunch or something, but went to the store, and I was just looking around, and there's this little basket of trinkets, and I think it's on the table, but all of them kind of had the same thing, and there was this one in the basket, and it had a picture of a sparrow and with a crown, and then the other side, turned it over, it said Hope. And we had already chosen to name her Olivia Hope. And so, and it was the only one in there. And so I bought it, and we have it with our collection of other items. And so her being the sparrow just kind of became this theme during the pregnancy and afterwards. And we've just kind of found different, appearances of the sparrow coming into our lives throughout the pregnancy. And then, do you want me to talk about?
You said leading up to her birth. So
Yeah.
Go ahead and share that Saturday morning.
So we were in the hospital, and I've been put on epidural, but I had a crazy reaction. I was very, very itchy, which I guess is common. So they were very nice to me and they gave me Benadryl. So I slept for most of my labor. And it was in the middle of the night, it was very dark out, and Jeff was still sleeping, and I woke up probably about 4 or 5 in the morning. And it was just as the sun was starting to come up, I was just laying there by myself, and I was just kind of thinking and praying. And slowly but surely there's a shadow of a bird-like shadow on the ceiling. And there was a picture of it on the slideshow, and it was very hard. I don't know if you could see it, but I tried to take a picture of it. And really what it was is the light shining on my IV pole and the bags, but it created the shape of a bird on the ceiling. And so I remember looking up at that. I said, that looks like a lot like a bird. And I just kind of got this message, and I can only say it's from God, that a peace in knowing that we had to let her go home. We didn't know if she was going to be born alive or what was going to happen, but there was just a sense of peace that I knew that she was going to go home that day. And then eventually Jeff woke up, and he gets up and he looks up and he goes, "That looks like a bird." And I'm like, "Okay, you see it too." So we took a picture of it, and I think that was just kind of the moment where we felt and we knew, regardless of what happened, that we had to completely surrender her. And so that's the story of the Sparrow.
That's great. I was going to ask you guys, this is for both of you. You had a discussion with Dr. Bain at the hospital, and I would like you to share that conversation that you had with him.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So Dr. Bain is the perinatologist who ended up being the doctor who delivered us. And it wasn't planned, and so he kind of came into the picture unexpectedly, and he was a rock star of OBs. And I think this conversation took place even before Jeff even arrived at the hospital, because him and the nurses came in and they said to us, or to me, basically telling us the reality of Olivia's condition and what was the likelihood of her survival, which was very, very low. And so they gave me the option, because they had me on monitors, and for whatever reason Olivia's heart rate kept dropping. And so every now and then the nurse would come running in, and she'd turn me on my side and she'd throw an oxygen mask over, and I'd be like, "What's going on?" I don't know. And I guess her heartbeat kept dropping, and so that was kind of their way of trying to move her to get her heartbeat back up. And so that happened a couple times. And so Dr. Bain and their nurses came in and said, because of her condition, and we don't know if she is going to be alive before birth or after birth, do you want to have the monitors still on? Like, they would still monitor it, but they would turn off the sound. And if her heart rate dropped, they wouldn't intervene. And they would just hope that, we would just hope that she would be alive at that time. And I remember being really confused and not really knowing what that really meant. And I had to call Jeff on the phone, because he hadn't quite showed up. And so we decided to turn off the sound to the monitors, and so that the nurses would not have to come in and intervene if her heart rate continued to drop. So we didn't know until right before she was born if she was alive or not. I mean, I guess they did, but I didn't, really know myself. I was kind of out of it, but that's the conversation I remember having with Dr. Bain, and that's what I think what we talked about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also, when I got there, Dr. Bain came in again. My parents were there, Brian was there, all of us were in the room, and I remember Dr. Bain explaining things over again. But I did specifically tell him, I said that we are letting God do what he wants to do. whatever comes of this, if she gets to live and everything's fine and nothing's what it seemed it to be, or not to its full extent, then that's what God has chosen. But I do remember telling him that we're expecting God to show up.
If you don't mind sharing, give us some details of Olivia's birth, as far as like what time was she born?
Yes, so it was roughly, it was early Saturday morning. At around 7 o'clock, they came in and examined me again and basically said I was ready for delivery. And so they got us all prepped and moved us down into the delivery room. So it was about probably a little bit after 8 o'clock we were in the delivery room. They did another quick ultrasound and they told us that she was still alive. And so I started pushing. And it was very quick. I only remember really pushing 3 times. So I think by 8:15, because I remember the clock was right in front of me, 8:15, I was starting pushing. By 8:27, she was out. And I was still very much on epidural, so I didn't feel a thing. So they had to tell me when to push. And so I remember the doctor saying, she has black hair, and he was so in awe. And I'm like, okay. And she came out, and I remember feeling her on my stomach. They put her on my stomach, and I heard a little squeak.
Yep.
And that was about all that we could hear from her, because she couldn't cry. They had to intervene right away, so they took her to NICU, and that's where kind of separated. They took her, and I remained in the delivery room until I was done. And Jeff went with Olivia to the NICU, and so that's where they continued to work with her.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. It was dramatic. The birth was simple, and it was amazing to be in the room. It was amazing for Dr. Bain to say, push, and boom, this baby just comes right out, like it was meant to be, just super easy, super simple. But what I do remember that was it is what it is, right? As soon as it was instantaneous, Olivia comes out, there's a little squeak, they touch, they snip the cord, and then boom, they got her out the room. There was already a NICU emergency kit on the outside of the room. And I get outside, and right away they're like, Dad, do you want to intubate and keep her breathing? And I said, yes, right away. So we were in the hallway while Toni was still in the room, and she doesn't have a clue what's going on, but everything's rapid. Everything's boom, 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 boom. It's all about keep the baby alive if that's what they want, and do what you got to do, and rush her up to NICU and start poking around. Her lungs were basically flat because without amniotic fluid, the muscle doesn't have a chance to expand and contrast and develop in the womb as she's developing. So she literally couldn't breathe on her own. It wasn't going to happen, and that's usually the reason why a baby does not survive. And then there's tons of complications with, dialysis until you can find a kidney transplant and all that crazy stuff. But the ultimate one right away is the lungs the baby not being able to breathe. And they're so delicate that they can only poke around so many times, and then they've punctured through the lung in so many different ways that they can't keep the lung inflated anymore. So it's crazy. It's crazy what we had to go through. But it was so quick and so fast, you just do it. And there's no guessing, it was amazing. It was very clear, it was very easy to make these decisions, and you just go with the flow type thing. But it's also a numbing experience because it's all new. You don't have a clue what's coming next and what you're even going to think about it. And then what decision next do I have to make that is crazy and unreal because you never have been in this position before.
Was there ever a chance that you guys could have gotten organs for her at all, or was that ever talked about?
Yes and no. I think we would have liked that option, but we just couldn't get anywhere with being connected to specialists that would give us that option. It was not something that was discussed at that time. There was, I think some of you remember, a congresswoman from Washington had the exact same condition, her baby, and so she was able to get resources and have infusions done, and her baby is still alive. And so at 2 years old, she went under an organ transplant. Her dad donated a kidney. And so, but that's such groundbreaking. Was not something that was available to us. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it is more so now. It is something a little bit talked about a little bit more now.
At the hospital, who was there with you guys?
It was Sherry and JD and Brian initially that were there with us, and I remember even Rachel came in, peeked her head in a little bit at first when we were in Roseville still, and then we got moved to Sacramento, and then later on, we chose to go to Sacramento.
You started at Roseville?
Yeah, we went to Roseville first. That was where I originally was supposed to deliver, but because of what was going on, we chose to go to Sacramento because they have a better NICU facility.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what options we were going to be presented with, so we just chose to go there.
Okay.
And that's when we ended up with Dr. Bain. But yeah, that it was mainly
This
the
is all
Bravex.
within
I did.
an hour or so?
Hours.
Hours.
Yeah, we got to Roseville at about 9. It was funny because I thought my contractions were they kind of were slowing down. So I thought they were just going to send me home. But then my doctor happened to be there, and she examined me and said, no, you're in labor. And so then we started calling everybody, and probably by noon we were in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she had already been born then?
No,
Not yet?
not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was Friday when we got moved to Sacramento, and then Saturday morning she was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How were you guys prepared to handle this day?
We weren't.
Well, you can speak.
We weren't. I had no idea what to expect. I had done a little bit of research, but found little information as to what to expect, what to do, what do parents do in a situation like this. I had very few ideas. We couldn't find any local support. If it wasn't for Pastor Dave and Jane, and for them reaching out to us, we would not have had, aside from our family, any support. And what was neat about Pastor Dave and Jane is that they came to us because I think it was their niece, one of their nieces, had a similar experience where the baby passed away, and they knew it beforehand. And so it was with that they came to us and offered us support, and so we met with them weekly. And if it hadn't been for that, we really wouldn't have had any support. And in terms of the whole hospital and delivery experience, I had no clue what to expect. And I was winging it, and just kind of whatever came, and whatever choices were presented to us, we kind of did our best to make the choices as best as we could with what we knew.
So did either one of you make the call to David then?
I remember.
I think we asked Brian.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
Brian.
I believe we asked
yeah.
Brian to call Dave. Did we?
And it wasn't that they were able to come
Right.
and be with us that day.
Just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, two things. The specialists, our OB, none of them knew of any resources for people who choose to carry, knowing that they have a life-limiting and/or fatal diagnosis, pregnancy, current. And we just baffled, and confused. And we're like, well, maybe we're not asking the right people. But it's like you're asking the specialist office, and they have a list of MFTs and speech therapy and speech pathologists and all this all this other stuff, physical therapy and everything. And then we found sharing parents for post-loss, but nothing having to do with support leading up to the actual event of loss. And then the other thing that was interesting, what was it? What was the second part? Oh, Brian, the support with Jane, George, and Dave. We did not get a tour of the hospital. We did not get a interactive YouTube video that said this is what you can expect, FYI. It's like you just don't know, right? It's all the unknown that you're experiencing for the first time. But what we did find out while Brian and my parents were there is that we were going to get. Ultimately, we were at the time and at the position at which Olivia was, with the specialist trying to keep her lungs inflated, essentially. They told us we had the time to say goodbye to her.